The Senate will come back to order. Senate will come back to order. I recognize the senator from the 13th for a motion.
Mr. President, would you please lift Senate Bill 62 off the table, please?
Senators asked that Senate Bill 62 be taken off the table. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 62 by Senator Summers of the 13th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 60 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to general provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to prohibit certain local ordinances or policies relating to public camping or sleeping. The Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. The respectfully submitted Senator again of the 47th District Chairman. Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 62, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 60 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to general provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to prohibit certain local ordinances or policies relating to public camping or sleeping. Senator Summers of the 13th and others offer the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend Senate Bill 62 by removing Section 3 from the bill. Senator Estevez of the 6th offers the following amendment to amend the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations substitute to Senate Bill 62 by deleting to provide for QUITOM actions from line 4 by adding a quotation mark at the end of line 32 by deleting lines 33 through 37. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator has asked for unanimous consent to take Senate Bill 62 off the table. Is there objection? Without objection, Senator, I'll call on you to talk about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. Today I bring you Senate Bill 62. This bill has been 3 years in the makings. I want to start off by thanking the study committee of the senators that worked with me over the summer on the study committee. We had 3 meetings, very education meetings. We found out that there's a serious problem out there and we need to address it. And we found out also that there's a lot of money floating around that needs to be accounted for in regards to homeless and unsheltered people in our great state of Georgia. And let me reemphasize something before we get started. This is not indigenous to the city of Atlanta, so I am not looking at Fulton County or the city of Atlanta regarding homeless. However, I will tell you, between this capital and 12 blocks to where I spend my life, it seems like, up here for the 90 days we're here most of the time. Well, no, 40 days is what we have, 90 days total. I see more and more and more homeless people on the sidewalks, under bridges, on the expressway areas, everywhere you can find out, there's just more and more of them. Folks, this bill may not be perfect, but this bill is a start. And let me tell you where we're at right here with this bill, basically, bottom line of this thing is. I took a bill that was many, many, many pages, and I have been cutting it down, and working with both sides, trying to come up with an amicable term that everybody can live with, and a bill that people do not feel threatened by. And nobody should be threatened by this bill. This bill is now, I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to take the bill, and I'm going to give you a quick thing about it. And I even got an amendment on the bill, as you all will see, that I'm taking out Section 3 of the bill. I was asked to take out Section 3 of the bill. I'm taking out Section 3 of the bill. There's another amendment coming to you all, and I'd ask you to not vote for that bill. That it's not a bill that I want to vote for, because I have worked with the different folks across the aisle and the folks out in the hall, literally everybody, and they've had plenty of time. We've talked about it over and over again, and I have given, and nothing has been offered back. So this bill needs to stay where it's at. Let me give you the quick rundown of this bill. The first section forbids local governments from condoning unsanctioned street camping and refusing to enforce their own laws against street camping or sleeping. It allows Attorney General or private citizens to take action against local governments and secure an injunction against this violation. That's what it does, period. The second section authorizes the state auditor to conduct a performance audit of the state and local homeless spending, and that auditor currently conducts performance audits on many aspects of state and local government, which have led to improved performances. there are literally millions of dollars being put out there in these 401, 501(c) programs out there that have no accountability to anybody. And all we're asking for, and I want to commend right now the senator on the 44th out there who made the recommendation that we have an audit on this stuff so we know where the money is going and we have a trail and we hopefully can find out if it improves their performances and find out what monies can be used to better the homeless situation that we have in Georgia. And I want to tell you something. In Crisp County, Georgia, my hometown, we have homeless people. We've tried to address the issue by building little tiny homes. We've tried to address the issue by offering them work, clean up things, and various other ways to make it done. But no monies are trickling down to our area. We had people testify from Ben Hill County. We had people testify from Valdosta, Georgia, Lowndes County, that they were not getting funding across the board that's coming in. And I'm not saying anybody is guilty. That's not what I'm here to tell you. I'm here to say we can do better, folks. We can do better. We can help the homeless and the unsheltered people, no matter how big the problem is. We can do better. And that's what I'm asking for in this bill here. And that's what I want you all to realize, that there are hundreds and hundreds of shelters and beds in Atlanta. And this goal is not to arrest or incarcerate anybody. The goal of this bill is to simply help people find the help that they need. And obviously we passed the mental health bill last year. The mental health bill is something we have to address toward homelessness because we have found out that, it's a sad thing to say, but the majority suffer for some type of mental health and they need that help. So the bottom line of it, folks, is I'm asking for your vote, a favorable vote on this bill, to move this bill forward. I'm going to reiterate one more time. This is not a perfect solution or a perfect bill. This is a start. This is a real start at trying to come up with a solution to make it better. And I will also like to put out that many states have got bills a lot more intuitive than this and much more stricter. This is a very, very good bill for the citizens of Georgia. Mr. President?
You do have some questions. Senator from the 26. You have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. The gentleman yield.
Absolutely.
I see what you're trying to do, but have you looked at those places who have tried to do something about people, and these persons have episodic episodes? In other words, they have a mental problem that when they're on their meds, they are all right. And then when they get off their meds, they are uncontrollable and you can't deal with them. So how do you plan to deal with those folks who might cause a problem, who have episodic episodes?
Senator, I hope that the audit will show where the monies are so the monies can be appropriated to the people who are trained to deal with that kind of situation. I am not trained to deal with it. I'm just trying to help. Thank you, Senator.
Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
Certainly.
Senator, isn't it true that I appreciate all of your efforts to try to make sure that people who are sleeping outside have better options?
I will say this. Of all the people in this Senate, you probably do the best job, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I do have a question about lines 33 through 37. It's related to the civil action that a person can bring. Do you further yield?
Certainly.
So if a regular citizen sees someone who is sleeping outside and they're not being, I guess, immediately arrested, this bill would allow that citizen to file a lawsuit against the state, and then who would pay for that citizen? Who would pay the law bills for that action?
It is my understanding, Senator, that the Ketam action is there to protect citizens like you and I so that we could bring suit against a government if the government wasn't doing their job. The government, as you know, the paragraph before that, the Attorney General can get his fees reimbursed. The person who brings that suit, in my thinking, would be on their own to bring that suit, and they have to furnish their own funding.
Senator, do you further yield?
Go ahead.
I think we read that differently. I believe that we would actually be on the hook to have to pay for that citizen. But my other question is there any limit to how often, I know you're having a hard time hearing me, are there any limits to how often a citizen can bring a lawsuit against a city or a county municipality if a citizen, in their personal view, believes that it's not being enforced? Are there any limitations? How many times can you sue before we stop picking up the bill?
Senator, that question there, I cannot answer because I do not know that, but I would say this. I think you can sue indefinitely, I would imagine, if you have the funding to sue.
All right, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have one more question, Senator. Senator from the 10th.
My knighted friend.
Thank you, Mr. President. My friend as well. Senator Yield?
Certainly.
Senator, I'm not sure I understand what this bill does, other than provide avenues to sue the city and have persons bring litigation against the homelessness or homeless persons. Can you explain to me where is the benefit in this bill for homeless population?
Well, it's more generic than that, Senator. What it's designed to do is it's designed to make cities across the Georgia enforce their actions and help these people and move them off the street. I mean, like I told you, if you ride with me right now to go back to my apartment, I can show you at least 100 people sleeping on the street. We can do better than that. Cities can find a place for these people to have a safe environment, to use the bathroom, to have porta potties, if nothing else. That's what it's designed to do. But the crux of the bill is for the audit that we have coming up that's going to tell us where these hundreds of millions of dollars are going that are coming in from the federal level that no one actually has an accountability on it.
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, when you think these municipalities would move the homeless population if they had a place to move them to?
I'll say the senator knows what he speaks on that. No, I will not. No.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Mr. President, you will. Thank you. I ask for a favorable consent. I ask for you to vote yes on amendment number 1 and no on amendment number 2, please. Thank you.
Senator from the 6th, would you like to speak to your amendment? Hold on one second, Senator. Read the caption. Secretary, read the caption.
Sir Estevez offers the following amendment, Amendment 3, to amend the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations substitute to Senate Bill 62 by inserting written before policy on line 16 by deleting or discourages on line 17 by deleting prohibit or discourage on line 20 and inserting in its place adopt a written policy prohibiting. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 6th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I offer 2 amendments to SB 62. I appreciate the senator from the 13th and his efforts in trying to address this issue. My amendments are meant to help clarify some things. The amendment number 2, a key TAM action is something that we discussed during committee. It's intended to be actions allowing a person to file a suit in the name of the state versus on behalf of themselves. And typically, you file a lawsuit on behalf of the state when there's something to recover. For example, Georgia has 2 key TAM actions right now. One is private action in the name of the state of Georgia for taxpayer protection against false claims. So alleging that a taxpayer is stealing money through their tax returns, for example. The second key TAM claim in Georgia right now is bringing action in the name of the state of Georgia for false Medicaid claims. Again, accusing someone of fraud in the Medicaid side of things. With key TAM actions comes some recovery from that plaintiff. It's intended to incentivize residents to bring and to whistleblow, to bring these lawsuits. The concern I have with this provision in SB 62 is that what exactly is the plaintiff recovering in the name of Georgia? There's no reward for the plaintiff of Georgia in bringing this lawsuit. Instead, I think a better option would be for that plaintiff to be able to bring a mandamus action just like anyone else would to force the state of Georgia, or to force the municipal government to enforce the law, which is a very different name of an action, and is very different expectations that a plaintiff would have in that instance. The Third Amendment is intended to set a standard by which local governments can play. By adding the word written policy, it becomes clear for a city what they should not do. If you leave it vague to just discourage or prohibit, a judge will have, or a jury will have to decide what that means. Does it mean someone sleeping at a gas station and a cop driving by? Does it mean any one location where you have several unhoused individuals sleeping? Does that mean that a city was prohibiting law enforcement officials from enforcing the law? It becomes very ambiguous, whereas if you include the words written in the statute, then it becomes a very clear, bright line test that a plaintiff or the attorney general would have to meet to prove that the city is in fact discouraging its law enforcement officers from enforcing the law. So those are the two amendments I'm proposing, and I'll yield for questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Senator from the 19th.
President, Senator, you yield.
Yes.
Senator, Amendment number 2, I think what you're trying to do is make sure that someone doesn't bring a QTAM action in the name of the state for what really looks like it ought to be a writ of mandamus. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If there was an amendment that changed line 33, and I'm sorry I'm asking you this on the fly, and changed civil action to that instead it read a person may bring a writ of mandamus for violation of this code section, and then basically struck the rest of that provision after the period on line 34 after state, and then had another sentence that said that that person, though, could recover fees and court costs, do you think that that would be basically what you were trying to do as well?
Yeah, I think that's something that they would have the authority to do now. So to clarify that in this specific law, that'd be fine with me.
Can I ask a follow-up question, the Senator for
Yes.
Yield? Do you believe that that might cover your concerns and still allow for an individual to bring the claim as the sponsoring senator, the senator from Cordele, is trying to do? The 13th?
Yes, I think it would.
Thank you.
Senator from the 14th, do you have a question?
Thanks, Mr. President. Will the Senator yield?
Yes.
Not to be disagreeable with either of you in terms of the conversation you just had, but isn't it true that one of the normal restraints on QTAM actions is usually takes the form of one of two different types of constraints? Number one being getting the Attorney General's permission to file an action in the name of the state, or number two being the first to file, like we see with federal QTAM actions, meaning that if somebody is in the posture of filing a lawsuit to address the senator from the 41st concerns, they would be the only one, isn't the concern that without one of those mechanisms to constrain the number of people who could take an action here, whether it's mandamus or QTAM, that there's a concern that we would be flooding court dockets with litigation on this question with no real limit? Wouldn't that be a concern, Mr.
Yes, it's certainly a concern that we would be incentivizing plaintiffs to file frivolous lawsuits, file a bunch of lawsuits, and essentially have an industry of these kinds of lawsuits. Which, by the way, would also burden our cities and counties.
You have no further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Recognize Senator from the 9th. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I'm not going to get into all the legal lawyer talk about this bill. I'm going to highlight some real talk about this bill. And of course, I'm rising today to speak against SB 62. I affectionately called it the Prosecute the Homeless Bill, but we did make some changes, so maybe I can't fully call that what it is. But the bill was riddled with significant issues, which may seem to be of secondary importance to the authors of this bill. Once again, we're trying to put a legal Band-Aid on an issue that has complex causes. We can't fine and jail people out of homelessness and put the onus on our municipalities and file lawsuits to affect change around homelessness. And we really need to start examining the stigma that is around homelessness and stop reinforcing some narrative that it's the fault of the person of why they're experiencing homelessness is that they could have made better life decisions. You know, we can't make homelessness the individual fault about someone's personal shortcomings. Because honestly, none of us in this room are any different. No one chooses, or to my knowledge, chose what family they were born into. Opportunity has not always been available to everyone. You have what you have because you're blessed. It was given to you. And we should all be thankful for what we do have. But please understand, everybody's circumstances are not the same. And it wasn't because they were born into a certain family or a certain thing. That could be part of it. But we never know. And none of us ever know at any moment when something can be taken away from us. Our jobs, our health, our homes. Anytime all of that could be taken away from you. And you might be someone, or a family member might be someone experiencing homelessness. Last year, we invested resources and time in the Georgia Senate Study Committee about unsheltered homelessness, and it was with the goal of reducing homelessness in our communities. I get it. I know what we're trying to do. Rather than applying the recommendations in that committee, we came with a bill that resorted into really prosecuting one of the most vulnerable and least supported populations in our state. The bill doesn't really reflect better solutions. And because I didn't see the better solutions in the bill, I'm going to offer some. And what I would have liked to have seen come out of that committee. How about some guaranteed or affordable housing? Where's that? How about rental assistance? Don't see that in the bill either. How about eviction protections and an integrated supportive social goods like mental health treatment? Where's that in the bill? Instead, the bill was actually requiring homelessness to be relocated to sanctioned camps, and I know we have taken some of that out. And the camps were going to be there with no baselines of standards or sanitation, which is a huge concern. And this is at a time when we're already having issues with state and local agencies that are even serving vulnerable children. And I don't know about anyone else, but I don't recall a single time in our history where confining a group of people to a camp was a good thing. We should be funding evidence-based diversion programs and supportive housing. Not only is it cheaper for the state, but what I've been told by my colleagues is a priority. And if we're trying to become the state, the best state for business, the best state to live in, and generally the best state in the nation, we need to reevaluate our approach to how we deal with critical social issues, and this is a critical social issue. Punishing people, making a life that they have that's already harder, again, putting the onus on our municipalities to deal with it. and deal with people who are already suffering beyond our understanding, it won't cause less people to fall into homelessness. This is not how we solve it. It won't address the issues that push them into this situation. It would only criminalize people already struggling to survive. And I know in this body, we have better, more humane ways to deal with homelessness. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well unless I have questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator from the 7th, do you like, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, colleagues. I rise in opposition to SB 62. I echo the sentiments from the senator from the 9th. I appreciate that the author of the bill has, offered an amendment to take out the part where we are no longer putting unhoused people in state-sanctioned camps. But I still don't see why this bill is necessary. Out of all the problems we have in the state, this doesn't actually help people. Think about the folks that are homeless, right? Who are they? They're the mentally ill, the people that are severely impoverished. They are our veterans. And I think that this bill, what it will do is further criminalize people for being poor instead of really offering them anything substantial that will actually help them. I don't think that this bill is, like I said, necessary, and I still think it's cruel towards poor people. There's so many more things that we could do to help people that are homeless. This ain't it, guys. So I urge my colleagues from both sides to please vote no on this bill. Thank you. I yield the well.
Senator from 41st, would you like to speak? You'll waive it off? All right. Senator from 29th, you'd like to speak on this bill? Hey.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank my colleague from the 13th. I served on the study committee, and the portion of the bill that I truly appreciate and understand, and I hope those others that served on the study committee with us remember and recall, is during this process we had a lot of people come up and tell us about different programs that they were doing, attempting to carry out to address some of the homeless issues around Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, and some other populated communities. And everybody that would come up and tell us about these incredible programs and talk about their funding, I got into the habit of inquiring if they were 501c3s, and they were. And it seemed that a lot of these individuals and these groups were getting funded pretty well, but they were not able to get their arms around some of these issues. And I'm talking about a tremendous amount of money. And then we got testimony from programs in rural Georgia, down in South Georgia, over near the coast, and other places where there was no funding. And whatever funding that was dropped was primarily used in the metro areas, which were Augusta, Atlanta, Savannah, Columbus, and Macon, and leaving mere scraps for individuals. We heard testimony of families living in cars and community parks down in South Georgia because of lack of funding. So we realized fairly quickly that the state was getting a tremendous amount of money. There seemed to be little or no management of the money, and that the money was being used only in certain areas, and there were no data points for us to use to determine if the programs were actually doing what they were attempting to do that the money was supposed to be spent on. So I absolutely think that the portion of the legislation between 43 and 50, line 43 and 50, if you excuse me, is extremely important, because until we fully know what our problem is, and until we get a handle around the amount of funding that comes in so that we can manage this program, then I'm afraid we're throwing a whole lot of cash into the wind while we're trying to handle a problem that I 100% agree with the senator from the 9th is a mission of compassion that we should all be invested in and supportive of. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield to any questions.
You do have a few questions. Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. In your experience as a law enforcement officer, if we look in this bill, it says that a county has to enforce their no camping laws, their no obstruction of the sidewalk. I can show
If you'll direct me to a line, Senator.
Yeah, sure will. So looking at lines 16 through 19.
Yes, ma'am.
In your experience as a law enforcement officer, if you are directed that you have to enforce the anti-camping laws, the anti-obstruction of the sidewalk laws, what action would you take as a law enforcement officer to address that situation?
Well, in my experience, and please remember, a lot of the homeless that we dealt with in Columbus would gather in the downtown/uptown area, which was had a lot of student housing with Columbus State University, and then we had the Chattahoochee River right there. What the vast majority of our officers would do would attempt to help the person relocate either to one of the shelters that were located down there, and if they refused to do that, to move closer to the river where there were more green space, if you will, where they would be able to find an area that would put them out of harm's way and at the same time allow us to accommodate the businesses who customers either weren't able to get in the door or weren't able to sit on the benches and everything because of those unsheltered individuals that would be sleeping or loitering in those areas for the most part.
Right.
But what we did not have is we did not have any, and I think you understand the importance of policies and procedures. And so we had policies and procedures dealing with those individuals who at times, because of mental health issues, that we needed to take them to the hospital and do 1013s, or individuals who may have been intoxicated and in a danger to themselves and others, that we had policies that officers were encouraged to follow for the safety of the individual.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to thank you for your kindness and compassion that you've shown to people who are outside. Is it not true that if we were to pass this bill, I am greatly concerned that the very actions that you described of moving a person from sleeping in front of a business to a green space would now no longer be an option for you, because as a law enforcement officer, you would be responsible for enforcing that no camping, no sleeping. Is it not true that I am very concerned that we could no longer kindly move a person who's sleeping downtown to a less conspicuous location, if you will?
While I appreciate the senator's concern, I'm not sure that would be the case, because what the bill does not do with the amendment that our friend from the 6th has offered, that he and I discussed at committee, as far as the policy side, I think all that does is tell the city that they cannot, or the municipality, that they cannot prohibit the officers from enforcing existing policies. It does not take the discretion away from the officer if they should choose to relocate them to a safer and more comfortable space.
Thank you. That's very clarifying.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And with that,
Senator,
go
you
ahead.
do have one more
Yes, sir.
question. Senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, would you agree that you nor I are lawyers?
I would happily agree with that.
Well, in the spirit of that, I would ask that you further yield.
I do.
Because I do have some concerns over the KETAM actions and how that could have a negative impact on the pro rata sharing of general obligation and what that could eventually mean to the skin of the body politic. Could you?
Senator, I was thinking the same thing as I approached the well, to the point that I became distressed and therefore put my reading glasses on prior to even stepping into the well, because I felt that that might possibly relieve some of the deep pain and angst that I felt. And knowing that the senator from the 28th, who has been a friend of mine for a long time, shared that same pain, I think has brought us closer.
Thank you. I love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
Okay.
And with
Do
that,
you have
Mr.
no more
President,
questions?
I yield the well.
We've got two amendments that have come to us, 4 and 4A. Secretary, read the captions.
Senator Tillery of the 19th offers the following amendment 4 to amend Senate Committee Substitute to Senate Bill 62 by striking civil action on line 33 and replacing it with writ of mandamus, and striking line 34 after the first period, and adding after the first period on line 34 the following: the person may recover court expenses and fees successful in their writ. Senator Hatchett of the 50th and Tillery of the 19th offer the following amendment 4A to amend amendment 4 to amend Senate Committee Substitute of Senate Bill 62 by amending Amendment 4 to add and strike lines 35, 36, and 37. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 19th to speak to Amendment 4. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope I can help alleviate some of the angst that's been felt. First, let's talk about Senate Bill 62 generally. I think if you look at what it does now that Section 3 has been removed, all it says is that if a county has an ordinance about camping, they got to enforce it. If you look at the next part, though, as you get to the bottom, you'll see that it does allow them to bring a civil action in the name of the state. And what Amendment 4 does, because of the comments from the senator from the 6th, is it takes the ideas of the senator from the 6th about striking the state of Georgia shouldn't be brought in as a plaintiff, and it takes the concerns from the senator from the 13th that if the state of Georgia or the attorney general doesn't bring the claim himself, allowing an individual to bring it, and it marries those two together. So if Amendment 2 passes or is withdrawn, and then Amendment 4 passes, everything is fine. What happens then is an individual can still bring this claim, but they will be bringing it for a writ of mandamus, and their recovery will be the expenses and fees that they themselves had, not the attorney's fees. I think this is a happy medium that makes everything work out to a way that helps the senator from the 6th accomplish what he wanted to have happen, at the same time helping the senator from the 13th accomplish what he was trying to make happen. And I do appreciate the amendment from the senator from the 50th who caught that in this process I didn't strike lines 35, 36, 37, and they would need to be stricken. Mr. President, that's presentation of the amendment. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
I think you do have a question. Senator from the 6th, you looking to do a motion, I guess, in a second? Okay. Senator from the 14th, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that even though I join many of my colleagues in opposing the bill overall, I do believe that this amendment makes the legal structure of that one section a lot better by taking the state out of it, and I will be supporting your amendment.
Well, thank you, Senator from the 14th, and I do thank you for your comments about it making the legal structure stronger. You know, I'm not on judiciary, so I'm learning this stuff, and I appreciate you helping me on that. But I do think that if you are voting against the bill, there's something I want to say too. Think about what you're voting against. If you're voting against the bill, you're voting against a county enforcing, after this Section 3 struck and this amendment goes through, you're voting against a county enforcing its own ordinance. A citizen being able to bring a writ of mandamus to force the county to enforce their own ordinance, or an audit of spending on homelessness programs. Those are the only two things left. So a no vote means you either don't think the county should enforce its own ordinance, or you don't think we should audit homelessness funds. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
All right. Senator from the 6th. You wanted to make a motion, I believe, to withdraw your an amendment.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to withdraw Amendment 2.
All right, the senator has moved to withdraws amendment number 2. Is there objection? Chair hearing none, and the amendment is withdrawn. Is that the only amendment you want to withdraw? Okay. All right. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the revision questions being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered, excuse me. All right, the question is on the, did you want to close debate, Senator, or who? That was you. That was you. It's always you that has these amendments, these bills with amendments. Come on, Senator, come close debate. So.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll collect this work there. I thank you to Senator from the X. I thank Senator from the 19th for your help on this. Guys, all we're trying to do is do the right thing. We're not trying to cause any issues whatsoever. I'd like to favorable passage of 1, 3, 4, and 4A on the amendments, please, and of course the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, the previous question has been ordered. Now we're going to move on to the amendments. The question is on the adoption of amendment number 1. Is there objection to the adoption of amendment number 1? Chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is adopted. The question is on adoption of amendment number 3 by the senator from the 6th. Is there objection to adoption of amendment number 3? Chair hears none, and amendment number 3 is adopted. Question on the adoption of amendment number 4. Oh, excuse me, number 4A, authored by the senator from the 50th. Is there objection to this amendment? Without objection, that amendment is added. And then our very talented amendment and appropriations chair, so talented, probably why we just can't ever find room for him on judiciary. But I know he keeps reminding me of that all the time. So, is there objection to the amendment the senator from the 19th authored? Without objection, that amendment is added as well. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary unlock the machine. Parliamentary inquiry, Senators from the 47th, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Wouldn't it be a good time to adjourn?
It's coming soon. It's coming soon, Senator. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 7. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I humbly request that Senate Bill 222 be ejected from the table.
The senators move that Senate Bill 222 be taken off the table. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 222 by Senator Burns of the 23rd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide that all costs and expenses relating to the election administration are paid for with lawfully appropriate public funds. The Senate Committee on Ethics recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns for the 23rd District Chairman. The Committee on Ethics offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 222, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide that all costs and expenses relating to election administration are paid for with lawfully appropriate public funds. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to, we've got an objection. You woke me up there. We have objections by the senator from the second. Would you like to speak to, all in favor? Why don't we just put it on the board? All in favor of taking it off the table, vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to remove the bill from the table, the yeas are 34, the nays are 20. Motion has prevailed, and SB 222 is removed from the table. I recognize the senator from the 23rd to speak to the...
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is an election bill. It's an election bill to clarify that funding for all Georgia elections should come from lawfully appropriated funds. That was the intent of SB 202's Code Section 9. We've had some communities who can't quite seem to understand the intent, so this bill is an attempt to clarify that. It does several things. It provides that all costs and expenses relating to election administration be paid for with lawfully appropriated funds. It prohibits certain local governments and persons from soliciting or accepting donations or other things of value to support the performance of election administration. It requires that certain donations be returned, and it provides for penalties. It also provides for accepting certain exceptions, and it ensures that superintendents and registrars are not taking any grants or gifts, and it prohibits the government, the county and municipal government, from accepting any grants or gifts, except, of course, from the state of Georgia or the federal government. So I call your attention to lines 25 through 27. That's the clause that requires that all costs and expenses related to primaries, elections, and runoffs and other undertakings that are authorized and required by this chapter be paid for from lawfully appropriated funds. I also then note that 28 through 32 prohibits that no county or municipality solicits or takes or accepts any funds from unauthorized sources. And then if you look at sections 33 through 37, it requires that any unauthorized funds be returned in a timely manner, And then finally, I'll call your attention to section 2 and 3. And if you look at lines 49 through 52, you will see that no superintendent, county, or municipality shall take or accept grants or gifts for the purposes of administering this chapter, the elections chapter, from any source other than the state of Georgia or the federal government. And then that language is repeated for registrars in lines 62 through 65. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a clarification bill. It is to ensure that our elections are funded through lawfully appropriated funds and not influenced by outside third-party funding sources. So with that, Mr. President, I'll yield for questions.
You do have a question. Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
To my colleague from the 14th, yes.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator, is it not true that any private funding that counties would receive for this sort of thing is routed through the county commission, which means that they'd be accountable to voters and would have to decide how to allocate that money in line with what their voters would want anyway?
The senator fails to recognize that the county itself is responsible for the elections operations, and that per 202 Section 9, they are required to provide operational funds without accepting third parties. The issue with the third-party funding is it is selective. Not all 159 counties in Georgia enjoy that benefit. There is a mechanism for any donation to go through the Secretary of State and be equitably distributed, but it cannot go directly to a county or directly to a superintendent or directly to a registrar.
Okay, well, does the senator further yield?
Certainly.
Thank you. I mean, on the question of this idea of selectiveness or arbitrariness, isn't it true that right now, through like the Less Crime Act, for example, sheriffs can receive this type of private grant? And I guess the question would be, what differentiates one arm of county government from another when it comes to the types of third-party or private donations we're allowing them to receive?
The senator is correct. Sheriffs can, through the act, for the Crime Act, accept external funding, but you have to understand, Senator, that does not influence the outcome of elections. When you third-party fund our local elections, state elections, or federal elections, you influence the outcome of the election. If you support the sheriff's funds, you're reducing crime, and I fully support that concept.
Last question, Senator.
Certainly, one more.
If that is the argument, that a third-party donation in some way influences the outcome of the election, I mean, is the position you're taking here essentially that the grant of funding means that the county commission is going to direct the hierarchy of election workers who conduct elections to influence the outcome in an improper way, in some specific conspiratorial way, or otherwise, how could you take that position?
That's not correct, Senator. What this tries to address is that certain third parties choose to only fund elections in certain counties in Georgia. Now, once the county accepts the funds, they pass it through. So basically, this was a pass-through option that some counties chose to pursue, and that was not the intent of SB 202, and it should have been the understanding of the county that they could not take funds and then redirect those funds to the local election operations.
Thank you for your answer,
Thank
Senator.
You have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield well, and colleagues.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Senator from 36.
One more.
Thank you. Does Senator yield?
Absolutely, to my good friend from the 36.
And to my good friend from Sylvania.
Thank you.
I questioned, and this is on the same topic, but what is so offensive about a county election process having additional funding that can help them be more efficient, hire the people they need, train the people they need, buy the machines that they need, and I have trouble understanding why that is somehow considered to be outside the law.
It's thank you, Senator, for your input. It's the issue of equitability, so that one county receives funding and 158 do not. And so your challenge is, how do you make sure that every county in Georgia has the same opportunity to run elections efficiently? And I believe that this legislation ensures that will happen.
further question for you?
Yes, happy to,
Isn't
Senator.
it true that our Secretary of State has been fairly outspoken about the fact that we need resources to do a better job running our elections, to really meet the needs and support the cost of running an election and doing a good job, that more funding is needed? That's my impression. Is that yours?
That is indeed, Senator. You are correct, and I will let you know that I support the Secretary of State's request as a member of Appropriations with my good friend, the Senator from the 19th. We're looking for opportunities to do that, but if any third party wishes to support Georgia elections, that's permissible. But they have to support Georgia elections through the Secretary of State with guidelines provided by the State Election Board.
So you believe that we're going to, at some point in time, really fund elections and the process of conducting elections at a level that's going to make it possible to do it without hiccups?
Senator, we had an excellent experience in our prior election cycle. 2022 was probably the best operational year and the best turnout year. It had the highest confidence level. It had the highest participation rate. SB 202 made it easy to vote but hard to cheat. This is simply a clarification, Senator, and I'll say we've made a lot of progress and we're trying to enhance what is already a very good system.
If you'll yield further.
One more question, Senator.
Well, isn't it true that this election that you described, the 2022 election that went well, is a demonstration of benefiting from these private donations to the election process?
That is not correct, Senator. There was no private donations used in the 2022 elections. The concerns we have been contributions that have been channeled through a county governing body over the last several months. And so we're trying to prohibit third-party interference and third-party influence of a particular county or area of our state. We want to make sure that all counties in Georgia have the same equal opportunity to vote, have their vote counted, and to make sure our elections are secure. Thank you for the Senator. If there are no further questions, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Well, there are more questions, but you always have the ability to yield the well at any time.
I will take
Senator.
one more question.
Senator from the 37th.
Does gentleman yield?
Absolutely, from 37th.
So let me paint a picture here for the gentleman and get your thoughts on this. If the state provided resources evenly across the state to all counties, but then an out-of-state billionaire who was a known conservative activist was channeling millions of dollars selectively to the most red conservative counties for turnout, maybe the expansion of drop boxes, so that there was twice the resources in select conservative counties that was swelling advanced voting in those counties because the extra resources being poured in there. Don't you think there might be members in this body, perhaps, hypothetically, even my friend from the 36th, that would raise their hand and say, wait a minute, why is it that inner city areas have just the standard resources, but these bright red conservative areas are being inundated with out-of-state resources to drive up conservative turnout? Wouldn't that be cause for many in this body to say, wait a minute, there's not fair allocation of resources?
The Senator knows what he speaks. That would be an inappropriate use of third-party outside funding. Thank you for your...
So isn't it true, all we're doing here is to make sure that any outside dollars that pour in go to the Secretary of State so that the resources are spread evenly across the state, so there's even access to these resources by every single voter of every single kind?
The objective of SB 202 was to ensure the equitable distribution of third-party resources. I thank the Senator for his question, and I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 2nd, would you like to speak on this bill?
Listen, Mr. President, I'm not going to be before you long. like Elizabeth Taylor said to her fifth husband, I won't be with you long now. Listen, colleagues, if we want to be serious about elections, I've worked in nonprofit for the last 16 years. And in nonprofit, you have a budget and you have to stick by the budget because the budget is your organizational plan expressed in numbers. Colleagues, if we're going to be serious about elections, then we should appropriate funding from the Georgia General Assembly to ensure that elections can be run fair, smooth, free, and open in this state. However, if it is not in our state budget, then it is not a priority of this body to make elections funded by the state. It's pretty cut and dry and simple. Don't say you want to ban funding to counties for the purpose of having elections. A gentleman came and testified in our committee from Bartow County, and I had to pull up where Bartow County was because that's up way past I-16. And so when I looked at where Bartow County was, he said he applied for a grant, he got the grant, and then I had to look at the results of Bartow County. And I assure you, colleagues, we did not win Bartow County on the Democratic side. And so if we want to be serious about elections, then we should appropriate those funds. We should work with the senator from the 19th to make sure that it's in the budget, because if we truly want to fund elections and we want to make sure this is a priority of the state, we would absolutely appropriate funding to ensure that we can cover the cost of elections and we can get out of this business of banning who gets grants and who does this. Let's just appropriate the money. How about we agree on that today, colleagues? I think that's bipartisan, that we agree in this body that we'll start off in the next fiscal year budget and then we appropriate the funding. And Mr. President, since it's late, I know the senator from the 19th has a question, but I'm gonna go ahead and yield the well so we can get out of here.
The senator knows how long of a drive it is to Savannah, Georgia. I can tell you that. Senator from the 42nd, would you like to rise to speak on behalf of this bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll also try to be brief. The issue underlying the problem here is that the state has created a lot of administrative burdens and unfunded mandates on state counties and state county elections boards that vastly increase under SB 202 without a commensurate and appropriate appropriation to meet those increased administrative burdens and hurdles. In fact, I remember distinctly bringing that issue up because we had papers all over our desk describing all of the unfunded mandates in SB 202 and was actually ruled out of order when I tried to cite state law saying that we needed a fiscal note on that because that was required under state statute. We tossed all kinds of unfunded mandates that are annual year-over-year expenses onto counties without supplying the appropriate funding to meet the demands of this body. And now we're turning around and we're furious at them because they're trying to fill their gaps and running around like, chickens with their heads cut off, stressed out completely in these big urban counties and trying to hold massive elections in huge counties that have hundreds of thousands of people in them that need to vote. Maybe not all of you can relate if you aren't from a big county, but I can tell you in the big counties, all is not perfect. All is not wonderful. It is not heaven when you try to go vote in DeKalb County. We have hundreds of thousands of people in our county. Why is it not just totally acceptable to all of us that the money can come through the state to be distributed equitably? Because it is a vastly different matter to try to run an election in a huge, densely populated urban county than it is in small, lightly populated counties. It is a completely different thing. And for this body to try to assert that it is one and the same and not acknowledge the vast difference in logistics, time, equipment, and staffing is really, really troubling to me. I think that we can all agree, as the ethics chairman and the senator from Savannah said, that, look, elections are fundamental to running a democracy and should be funded appropriately, not requiring public, private, and philanthropic endeavors. But if the legislature denies the requisite funds needed to run the election system as required by the laws it passes, it is grossly unfair to tie the hands of our local election offices and then penalize them. On the hypothetical from the senator from the 37th, of course that would be wildly inappropriate if grant money was used for a turnout operation. That is not what we are talking about. Yes, we can all agree that if there was money from some right-wing billionaire going to the county itself, the government entity, to run a turnout operation, or the other on the left side of the aisle, yes, that would be inappropriate. We are talking about the mechanics and administration of the elections themselves, making it so individuals can vote with ease, efficiency. Yes, it should be easy to vote. It shouldn't be easy to cheat. But does that really mean you got to be in line for 4 hours? I don't think so. And that's simply not going to happen in an area that is not one of our densely populated counties. And I just want to read you a couple things that my elections board is saying. Again, the reports that we have, that I have, all is not hunky-dory in the land of trying to run elections in DeKalb County, Georgia, one of our largest and most populated counties. One board member pointed out that the state elections board has not yet been able to provide rules for carrying out 202, partially because of a lack of funding. She noted that the additional processes mandated by the bills also mean additional staff hours and a host of additional costs that should be funded by the state for all counties. She added that regardless of the dominant political party in each county, all elections boards and workers are struggling with additional processes required by SB 202, staffing issues, and funding. The quote was, "Firefly, the communications channel used by all of the elections officials throughout the state of Georgia, at times has read like a group therapy session." If our elections workers are on their private chat line engaging in group therapy sessions because we have increased their burdens, not funded them, and then now we tell them, no, you raise taxes on your citizens because your county is large, your county is urban, your voters have to wait in line for 4 hours. No philanthropy there. Just go ahead and raise taxes. State ain't gonna help you. We can't have the elections seem like they're a mess. Go ahead and raise the millage. Well, I, for one, think that some of that should be the state pitching in. And that's how you make elections fair, efficient, easy to vote, and hard to cheat, when the mandates are coming from the state. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 40th, would you like to rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 222. You know, the funding for the elections in my home county come through the county commission. Whenever we need to, we can ask for more funding. If we want to have more early voting locations, we go to the county commission and we get more funding. So this idea that everything across the state has to be equitable or is equitable just is really not the case. If it was, we would have some sort of like QBE formula like we have for our schools with equalization grants that are adjusting things statewide, but we don't have that. So it's already not the same from place to place, and it's really not supposed to be. Now, I've served on the Ethics Committee for 4 years, and during that time, we've passed a lot of election bills, some small, some big. During that time, as we were passing all these unfunded mandates, I never saw a fiscal note, and rarely did I see committee members consult with election officials across the state, the people who actually do the jobs. We have asked a lot of our county elections officials during recent years. We've asked them to purchase and maintain very expensive voting equipment, and they now pay tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in extended warranty costs every year. They're now being asked to replace their poll pads, scanners, and ballot receptacles, which would cost my county of DeKalb $1.5 million in unfunded expenses. On Election Day, the Secretary of State requires that counties have paper printouts of all the voter rolls in every precinct as a backup to eNet in the event of a technology failure. DeKalb has 191 precincts. Those reams of paper add up to significant costs for the county. We've asked our election officials to recruit and retain election workers, first during a global pandemic, and then now during a worker shortage. Risk limiting audits, part of Senate Bill 202, they're important. Actually, it was House Bill 316. They're important, but they cost the counties additional costs for temporary staff time. Vetting and responding to unlimited and unsubstantiated voter challenges. This takes up precious staff time, as do many other mandates of Senate Bill 202. We are burdening our election departments with extra responsibilities and costs while choking off their funding they need to meet all those demands. In recent years, it has become a necessary practice as the state continues to shift more and more costs down to our local governments. Counties should not have to seek outside funding, but with all the unfunded mandates that the senator from the 2nd and the senator from the 42nd referred to, they have to seek this outside funding. What we need, as the two senators have already said, is state appropriations instead of pushing the cost down to the county. So yes, we need to have those discussions with the senator from the 19th. Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no questions, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to speak in opposition to SB 222. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think it's very apparent that this bill is partisan backlash. If passed, this bill would punish counties and government employees for innovation. Moreover, it's expensive to hold elections, and mandates from this body are making it more and more expensive each year. Yet this body has refused to fully fund these mandates. With this bill, rather than looking to do something sensible like lower the cost of our counties face by reforming the runoff process, we are asking our election administrators to bear the costs we impose on them without the ability to seek support. But more than anything, I'm deeply concerned and frustrated by the attempt in this bill to create felony penalties for accepting outside funding which already must undergo a rigorous evaluation at the county level before it is used to support elections administration. All I can ask is why? Why is this body trying to make it harder to administer elections? Why is this body trying to make our elections more expensive for the taxpayers? And why is this body not working to make it easier for all Georgians, regardless of party, to exercise their constitutionally guaranteed right to vote? I do not support defunding election boards. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
I yield the well.
Senator from the 37th.
Mr. President, I had not planned to speak to this, and I won't take much time. But I will say this. What the gentleman's bill does in Senate Bill 222 is to achieve fairness. The idea that private money pouring into any county, whether it's training employees, whether it's making systems to take wait times down from 4 hours down to 30 minutes or 15 minutes in one county where those resources are not provided in others, access to the polls, and creating a circumstance where there's advantages for one county where private dollars flow that are able to be funded selectively based on an individual private entity's special interests distorts the system of fairness. It shocks me that people in this body are suggesting that private dollars flowing selectively into selective counties somehow makes the system better. I was talking to a group of kids on this issue a couple years ago, and I said, imagine a wealthy county that had way more resources, that had 15-minute wait times, 10-minute wait times, where folks could get off on their lunch hour, go vote, and all these advantages in terms of expanded hours to vote within the statutes, versus another county that maybe had one place to vote. You had to drive 30 miles to get there and only limited hours to vote. Is that fair? The kids say, of course that's not fair. Because access to voting that's dramatically distorted in one place versus another creates unfairness. All we're trying to do is to ensure that private dollars that come into the state are spread evenly across our state so that everyone's basic right to vote, one man, one vote, is maintained and maintained fairly. It's shocking to me, this idea that private dollars of any political color ought to flow anywhere to advantage one over another. Senate Bill 222 achieves fairness, and anybody out there who's watching this needs to understand nothing more, nothing less than fairness for every single person, no matter what their backgrounds, what this bill does. And it's just shocking to suggest that anything other than that ought to be accepted by any member of this chamber. Fair is fair, and every one of us ought to stand behind that. That, Mr. President, I ask for your support for Senate Bill 222.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 25th, do you like to take the well? Senator from the 22nd. We're getting close. Getting close. You can make a move. Hey, you make a motion right now.
Mr. President, I'll be brief. And I had not planned on speaking, but I realize that this is a monumental occasion. Do we realize now that the senators from the 23rd, 37th, and 22nd agree on something? Maybe not on what you think. But we now have a critique of wealth coming from both sides. We now talk about fairness and wealth equity coming from both sides. We are now talking about an equal distribution of resources coming from both sides. So today is a monumental occasion because from this point forward, when we talk about education, we'll talk about equal distribution of resources. Healthcare, equal distribution of resources. Poverty, equal distribution of resources. Criminal justice, equal distribution of resources. Today is a monumental occasion, Mr. President. I yield the well.
I knew the senator from the second is going to start rubbing off on folks here. Mm-hmm. When you got the senator from Augusta go preaching now, you know you've done something now. All right, Senator from the 16th, would you like to rise and speak on this bill? You got your earpods in? Mm-hmm. All right, he didn't want to speak after all. All right, does any other senator wish to speak for or against this measure? Chair hears none. Is there objections to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Senator, would you like to close debate or?
Don't take them out of it. That's right. I want to just quickly point out a couple, three things. First of all, the grant that my friend from the 22nd mentioned was a lawful grant from the Secretary of State's office to Bartow County. Those types of grants are available to every county. Any county can apply through the Secretary of State and receive additional support. The second thing I'd like to just point out, the senator from the 42nd suggested that larger counties should have better voting stuff as opposed to smaller counties. Does that mean that larger counties' votes are more important than smaller county votes? I'm not convinced of that. There also was a quoted number that said there were 4 hours of wait time. Not in 2022. The wait time in 2022 was 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Go check the statistics on average. And I would suggest to you that, thank you. I would suggest to you that this committee, the Ethics Committee, and these election bills, we fully engaged our county election officials, our registrars, and the Secretary of State's office. I agree with my good friend from the 22nd. It is a monumental day because we are ensuring fair elections across Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Please, everybody maintain your decorum. I know it's cold in here. We're going to do one more bill. You got one in, don't you, Lucas? Excuse me, the senator from the 26th, so my old seatmate. All right, here we go. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, nays are 22. The bill has received the requisite constitutional majority and therefore is passed by substitute. All right, we got one more left in us. All right. I know it's been a long day. Here we go. Senator, I recognize the pro tem for motion.
Mr. President, I move that we remove Senate Bill 148 from the table, please.
The pro tem has moved that we remove Senate Bill 148 from the table. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 148 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 14 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to nonprofit corporations so as to comprehensively revise, simplify, and modernize said chapter. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the pro tem's motion? Chair hears none, and the bill is removed from the table. I recognize the distinguished pro tem from Macon, Georgia, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know you've just got one more bill in you, and I promise you, if you cooperate with me, I'll cooperate with you and make this short and quick, and I'll try to make it painless. This is what you've all been waiting for, though. I know we've talked about cities, we've talked about voting bills and other things that nobody really cares about, but I know you really want to talk and learn about the rewriting of the nonprofit code in the OCGA for the state of Georgia. There we go. Here we go. It truly is just a simple little bill. There's just one change in it, but This talks about nonprofit corporations. They're essential to our state economy and our everyday lives. It's very important that Georgia nonprofits be well run, that donors are confident that their gifts will be properly spent, and that members' rights and interests are protected. Most of the nonprofits located in the state of Georgia are incorporated here, and they're a critical part of our structure. Nonprofit section of the Legislative Committee of the State Bar of Georgia has conducted a review for the last 3 years of the nonprofit code. The problem is that the Georgia Business Code has been updated several times over the last 30 years, but the nonprofit code has not been updated. So the committee took 3 years to do the complete review of this 184-page little bill I've got here for you. A significant portion of the existing code remains unchanged, but the changes recommended really fall into 3 categories. 1, revisions to clarify and simplify the language of the code. Number 2, revisions to update the code so we're keeping up with the days. And number 3, more significant revisions that change and improve the law in specific areas, most of which aim to promote good corporate governance. I am happy to go over details and give you some of the specifics, but it might just be more efficient given the hour that I'll just take any questions if you have them, and if not, I'll sit down and we'll vote and we'll go home.
You do have a question, Senator.
Okay.
Senator from the 17th.
Would it be the senator from the 17th by chance? Oh, it is.
Mr. President, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion that pursuant to our Senate rules, the author read the bill in its entirety.
Objection sustained.
Senator from the 2nd, do you have a question?
Does the senator yield?
Yes, I'm going to yield for my good friend from Savannah.
Mr. President, as a pro tem, I want you to know that I'm a nonprofit CEO and I have no problems with the litany of pages that you have here, and I in fact do trust that this will help me get back down I-16, so I'm going to vote yes.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. We'll put you on 16 going south quickly.
Senator from the 24th.
Does the senator yield?
I do for my good friend for the 24th.
Wouldn't it be true if you get out of the well, we could vote?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I know that'd make us all happy, wouldn't it? And with that, I'll take that. Now, Mr. President, I think I'll yield the well.
All right. Sounds good. Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 13th.
Parliamentary choir.
State your question.
This is not a tort reform bill, is it, sir?
You know, that's why you should read each and every word of every bill that comes through here, Senator.
Well, it was a little long, Mr. President. Thank you.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, would we actually ask the senator from the 13th if he has a question, just buckle his seatbelt.
On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55 and the nays are 1. This bill has received the requisite constitutional majority and is therefore passed. So y'all want to do 8 more? Y'all ready to go home? I recognize the majority leader.
Woo! All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Let it be known that the House left hours ago, way before dark, but the Senate's still working hard. But therefore, I move that the Senate stand adjourned pursuant to SR 6 until 10 a.m. Monday, March the 6th.
Secretary, read the announcements.
The Rules Committee meeting will happen at 4:50 of the Capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Monday morning, March the 6th. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We're adjourned. Have a good evening.